being triggered is the best thing that can happen to you. It's very unpleasant, but it's still the best thing that can happen to you. If you have the skill to relate to your triggers, your experience of being triggered, then you have a pathway to your best life, to your highest potential. And we're going to go through this together. First, we're going to talk about what happens in your experience when you get triggered, then what you can do about it, what these skills are that help you relate to it, and then how this can transform your life and move you towards your best self, your best life. I speak from personal experience. If you get triggered, if you are triggered, maybe this video is triggering you, if you have this experience, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's closer to the truth that you're doing something right, that your body is healthy, it's functioning properly, and we can learn the skills to work with our body, which essentially wants our best self. It wants the highest potential for us. Okay, so the word triggered means, this is my definition, that something in our life, some experience that we have, is going to be resonating, is going to evoke energy, memories, experience that we hold in our nervous system. So as a quick example, I get bit by a dog when I'm a child, and then I see a dog, and I'm going to have a hyper-active response to the dog, because I'm not seeing just the dog now in the present moment. I'm re-experiencing, or I'm remembering being bit by a dog. So when I see this dog in the present, I'm seeing that there's a dog now, but my past experience with dogs, a completely different dog, is now activated. And I am seeing both the present and the past. So when this happens, first off, it can be very physically unpleasant, physiologically unpleasant, but it's also really difficult. It's inherently difficult to separate what is happening now and what is happening in the past. This is what projection means. Projection is when we assign to the present moment things that have already happened. So this could be a very nice dog, it could be a very gentle dog, and yet my body is telling me that there is a threat, that there is a danger. This happens all the time. So we're going to do this. The problem is not that we're having this reaction. The problem, if there is one, is that we have stored uncompleted experiences in our nervous system. This dog is actually just pointing to the fact that I have unresolved, stored energy in my body. So in a sense, this dog, or whatever the phenomenon, whatever the experience is in the present moment, it's doing me a favor. It's actually pointing out places in my life and in my body where I have stored energy, where I'm holding on to pain or uncompleted experience. So I have a couple choices. One is that I can avoid dogs. I can label all dogs as bad, or all experiences like this as bad. I can project or avoid experiences that remind me of this experience, or I can become aware that I'm basically harboring and storing pain in myself. This takes energy. It limits my ability to relate to life. It limits my ability to see clearly, because I'm constantly projecting and managing my past experiences. I'm looking for things that have already happened, essentially, in my world, and I'm trying to avoid things and protect myself from things that have already happened. So when I get triggered, the first thing is to realize it's going to create arousal and distress. It's going to create some level of discomfort. And that's because what I'm holding in my body is actually in a state of charge. So the first thing is I'm going to have to learn to recognize that this is happening to me, that I'm becoming elevated or charged, that my body is starting to have a reaction that requires my attention to be with. Like, I'm going to have to learn how to bring more attention to my body, even when being triggered is going to want to mobilize me into action to do something about what is happening in my environment. So the first step is to go, aha, this is happening to me. I feel this is a spike in arousal. I feel this is in or sort of rapid thoughts, memories, as a confusion. Suddenly, in 1 minute, everything's fine. In the next minute, it's not. Again, lots of personal experience with this. So often when this happens, it's like we get in on a conveyor belt, like we are in motion. We find ourselves reactive, just being taken over by something that happens for us. This is part of why being triggered is good for us, because we want to resolve this. We want to take the reactivity out of our experience. Where we are reactive, we're not doing what we really want to do. We're not doing what's necessarily in our best interest. We're kind of taken over by a protective, defensive instinct. And that is never a sign of our highest potential. It's never a way of being which is the fullest, most mature, most developed part of ourselves. So when this happens, again, first there's going to be a lot of charge, intensity, and we're going to have to learn how to slow down. So in other guided meditations that I do and in the work that I teach how to relax and slow down. This is a really fundamental skill to be able to soothe and regulate charge that we have in our nervous system. So the first thing that I do is I actually move towards my body. Instead of moving towards the world and the dog or the person or the thing that's happening, I learn to turn towards myself when I get triggered. Instead of moving away from what's happening to protect myself from it, I learn to move towards it. And there are several things that I can do. There's several things that I teach that help us be with whatever's happening for us. First is we can connect more with the physical weight of our body. We can connect with gravity, with the fullness of our body. No matter what's happening in our nervous system as charge, physically, the weight of our body and the pull of gravity is a grounding, connecting, it's slowing down force that when we become aware of it is applied to our body, which means that I can counteract or I can support the charge that I have in my body by becoming heavy and slow, by feeling my weight. Another way that I can do this is I can shift my focus to awareness. Instead of being heavy and connected to gravity, I shift my focus to the experience of being aware. Awareness is not a thought. It's not a feeling. It's not a sensation. It holds no charge. It has no desire to protect itself. It's just an awake, witnessing space. This gives me refuge or some space, some felt sense of space that helps me regulate the charge and allows me to slow down. Because awareness isn't going anywhere. So gravity is not going anywhere. Awareness is not going anywhere. So what I do is I learn to shift my focus as I feel the charge in my body to gravity, the weight of my body, or the experience of being aware. Or both. Why not both? All of these things are happening at the same time. My body is heavy and full. There's charge in my nervous system. And I'm aware of that. So this is something that we practice. We learn to practice relaxing, shifting our focus, and we become better at it. So as I shift my focus, as I slow down, I get better and better. I get clearer and clearer about what is actually happening in my body. I'm looking, I'm paying attention. Before I was just projecting and reacting and taking action to defend myself or attack or whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm just being in the reactivity. But I slow down, I connect to my body. I become more connected to my witnessing presence, to this experience of being aware. And now more of my attention is paying attention to what is happening rather than what I should do. And this is really the magic. When I become more aware of what is happening, I can start to recognize that the charge in my body is less a product of what's happening now and more a product of something that has already happened. The beauty of this is that I can stop projecting onto the dog or my wife or people in traffic. I can get out of essentially blaming people for things that have already happened to me. I can become more aware of the fact that I have charge from the past, and I can start to care for that. Because it's going to be much more effective to care for the charge from my past than it is going to be to take action in the future, in the present. So as I slow down, I learn to pay attention to what's happening in my body. And I notice that the feelings that are arising in the present moment are stored feelings. They're from things that have already happened to me. When feelings from the past, when energy from the past comes up, it's because I've been storing it in my body. This takes energy, this takes resources. It has an impact on my physiology. It has an impact on my development and maturity. It has an impact on what I'm able to do to create in the world. So when this comes up, what it means essentially is that my body is letting go, is ready to let go, is being pressured, is being invited by life, by being triggered. You're being invited to let go of something that you are holding that has been limiting your potential in the world. So this is why this is good for you. It's good for you because if you can recognize that this is the stored past and you can support it to move, then you don't have to hold it anymore. If you don't have to hold it anymore, there's less of you in a contracted, tense state actually holding on to energy, trauma, that you're protecting yourself from. So it means you're more relaxed. It means you're more open. It means you can see the dog or your wife or the people in traffic with fresher eyes. Rather than projecting your past onto them, you can see them for who they actually are, for what they actually are. This is a much more effective way to relate to the world. If we are constantly projecting our past pains onto the world, we see a much less beautiful world and we interact with it in a much more guarded and hostile and protective way. So the opportunity to relate to people with less of that stored past is a blessing. It means that I'm more effective in all my relationships and my outlook in life more generally. So as I recognize that the past is arising in me, this is about the time that I got bit by a dog in this case, I can actually allow that experience to complete itself, to flow through me. The reason that I've been storing it is because I didn't have enough capacity, time and space, and physiological capacity to tolerate the charge when it happened. That's the definition of trauma. Trauma is just an overwhelming experience that I'm holding. So when I re-encounter the energy that I'm holding, it's unpleasant because the charge that I'm holding was overwhelming. I'm basically being invited to feel something that was previously overwhelming for me. So this is why being triggered and the skill set that we need to respond to it could also be described as capacity. I need to have the capacity to feel what's happening for me. If it was overwhelming in the past, what's going to make it different? Well, the skill set that we develop, learning how to ground ourselves, to slow down, to shift our focus to awareness, which itself is never in pain, which never has any fear or worry. This capacity is always going to be greater than what we had at the time. So we have more capacity now, and we use this capacity to feel the past, to feel the pain or the overwhelming nature of the past that we are holding. So every time we do this, our body has to spend less energy holding itself. Every time we do this, I'm projecting my pain less onto the world. And every time I do this, I am more available to relationship, to connection, and to expressing an unguarded, unfearful, undefended goodness into the world as myself, as my purpose for life, as my joy, as the meaning of my life. It's become, the meaning of my life is less to defend myself from experiences and more to create, to relate, to enjoy, to give, to receive. Okay, so being triggered is the best thing that can happen to you if you have the skills to free yourself, to process the past that you've been holding. This is a practice. This is something that you learn progressively, that you get better at. And getting better at it doesn't mean that you get triggered less. If anything, it means you get triggered more. Because the more capacity you have and the more you turn towards your body, the more you will notice the stored past that you have. And the more the stored past will come to you, because it doesn't want to be stored. It wants to be felt. It wants to move. It wants to be complete. It wants to live. Energy in our nervous system doesn't actually want to stop moving. Energy's nature, whether it's emotion, thoughts, sensations, the nature of energy is to move. Well-being and health of our nervous system is movement. We learn how to get out of the way of that. When we have the capacity to feel, we don't need to stop things from moving. So the more that you learn this skill, the more that you practice this skill, the more will move through you, the more health is possible for you. So the way to learn this, there's several ways to learn it. You can learn it on your own through a meditation practice. And in this video, there will be links to some of the guided meditations that I do that build this capacity, especially a connection to awareness. It's very, very powerful. You can also learn it in relationship. You can learn it through connection. You can learn it by speaking and relating to people. That's a whole other topic. But I teach both of these ways. I teach them in groups and I teach them in person. In the description of the video, I'll give you some links where you can access the programs that I offer. Again, I teach this as a personal practice that I learn to be with myself and regulate the emotions that I have and recognize what's happening for me and allow it to move through me. But I also teach people how to express and communicate that past to support the processing of the overwhelming past, the stored past, through relationship. Hope this helps. Again, I'm going to link some of the guided meditations that I think are most useful, the description to my programs, and what I teach in the description below.